genetic principles in the mid 1800s while we were fighting the Civil War in the United States. One of the things that he did was he used pea plants and he made sure he had purebred pea plants before he did his experiments. In our case, we're not going to use pea plants, we're going to use dragons. The dragon that you see on the left is female. The dragon on the right with the little chin thing is the male dragon. And in this case, we're looking at the trait for wings. We're crossing these two dragons with wings and seeing that all the offspring have, in fact, wings. We're going to do that several times until we establish what are called purebred dragons. That is, we can guarantee they're going to have offspring that have wings. But here's a set of dragons that don't have wings. We're going to do the same. We're going to cross these dragons without wings until we can rest assured that all the offspring will not have wings. Once we do, we can answer this question. What do you do, or what do you get when you have a dragon with wings crossed with a dragon that doesn't have them, these two purebred strains of dragons? Well, the results look something like this. All the offspring had wings, which raised the question, what happened to that wingless trait? Well, we'll call these offspring hybrid. They're not purebred anymore because we mixed dragons with wings and dragons without wings. So they're hybrid. And what happens when you cross the hybrid dragons? The results look something like this. That is, 75% of the offspring have wings and 25% don't. So the wingless trait shows it back up again. Now, when Gregor Mendel did this, he figured out the only way you can have a combination like this is for the parents to have two factors. And of these two factors, they only pass one on to the offspring, so that each offspring have a combination of the parents' factors, one from the man, one from the woman, one from the male, one from the female. We're going to call these factors alleles. So the factor here has to do with the trait of wings, and you have these two different possibilities with wings or without. So that's the allele part. You have either the allele for wings or the allele without wings. What Mendel did was he assigned letters to each of those parents. And he assigned a capital letter for the dominant trait and a recessive letter for the lowercase trait. And that's how he got this idea that you can only pass one of those factors on. You either pass the capital letter or you pass the lowercase, but not both. This is his principle of segregation. So the first is his principle of dominance, that one trait dominates over the other when you mix them together. The other is this idea of segregation, where each parent has these two factors, but it only passes on one. The two factors segregate or separate from each other so that you only pass on one of those two. Now, if you know what the parents are, you can predict what the offspring can be. So what's the probability of having an offspring that has wings? Well, in this case, 75% chance offspring with wings. What's the probability of having one without wings? Well, 25% chance without wings. So these combination of alleles, these letters that we're looking at, he calls those genotypes. So the phenotype is the physical trait, wings, not wings. The genotype is a combination of genes or letters. In this case, capital E, lowercase e, the dominant gene, the recessive gene, or the dominant allele, the recessive allele. When we try to predict the offspring, we can use something called a Punnett square. So to set that up, we'll put the two alleles from one parent on the one side, and we'll put a little cross in between, or X, and then we've got the alleles from the other parent. Then what I do is I just take the one parent's alleles and I write them down the side. Then I'll take the other parent's alleles and I'll write them across the top. And then it's just a matter of combining the columns and rows. So I'll move that capital E into the first box and into the second box, and that lowercase e into the first box and the second box. Then I'll take the alleles that are on the top and I'll start moving them down. And when we do, we get these combination of letters. And so we look at that and see that half of the offspring have wings, the other half of the offspring do not have wings. There's another example. So again, I'm going to put the two big E's down the side, the two little E's across the top, and then just pair them up, just matching, like moving down from the side and moving across like that. So I just pair them up to get those results. If I get alleles that are the same, like little e, we're going to call that homozygous. If I get alleles that are different, we'll call it heterozygous. Homo means the same, hetero means different. I need to figure out if something has a dominant trait, I'll just breed it. If that trait shows up in the offspring, it's dominant. If the trait is masked or hidden, it's going to be recessive. So when I breed it, though, I'm going to breed it with a purebred recessive. All right, little e, little e. I want to make sure it's purebred recessive. That way, if that trait shows up, I'll know that it's dominant. If it doesn't, I'll know that it's recessive. Each parent can only pass on one of the two alleles. So if you have a big E and a little e, you only pass on one of those, not both. Now, if I know the combination of the offspring, I can figure out what the parents are like. So how do I get this particular combination? Well, I've got to have parents that have a big E, little e, and I cross it with a little e, little e. It's the only way I could possibly get that kind of combination. Here's a little trickier one. How do I get this combination? Well, to get this combination, I'm going to have two heterozygous parents, big E, little e, and I'm going to cross those to get that particular combination. Which raises this interesting idea. There's only 6 possible crosses or questions I could ask. The phenotype ratios of each one, the physical characteristics, make it interesting. So what do I mean about these 6 possible crosses? So here's the first possible problem I could ask. Big E, cross it with a big, big. If I do that, then I'm going to get all of them will have the wing trait. They're all going to have the dominant trait. But what are my other possibilities? So I'm just going to systematically replace one of those capital E's with a lowercase one until I get all 6 possible combinations. In each of those combinations, all the offspring are going to have that trait. They're all going to have the dominant trait. All of them, 100% of the offspring will have wings. When I get to this question, I'm going to notice that 75% have wings, 25% do not. When I get to this one, 50% have wings, 50% do not. When I get to this one, I'm back to 100%. But in this case, 100% do not have wings. So the only real interesting problems are problems 4 and 5, where I either have a ratio of 75 to 25 or a ratio of 50-50. If all the offspring have wings, it's got to be one of the first 3 combinations. If it's 50-50, it's got to be combination number 5. If it's 75-25, it's combination number 4. If none of them have wings, if none of the offspring have wings and a big brood of dragons, it's going to be combination number 6. Now, meiosis explains this because meiosis is this idea of forming these gametes, sperm and egg cells, and when we do, they're only going to have the haploid number, the half number of chromosomes. So the chromosomes are going to have that gene or that factor on it, and you only get one from the dad, one from the mom. So in this case, we have the eggs that have this dominant trait, the capital letter F, and those chromosomes replicate, and then they divide, and then they go through prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase a second time. They divide again so that each egg cell just has the one chromosome, and on that chromosome is this factor, this allele, this gene for freckles, dominant. In the sperm cell, we've got the recessive trait. So when that sperm cell meets up with that egg cell, we got a combination that's heterozygous, big F, little f, and the result is going to be an offspring with freckles. Here's another example, that exact same thing. We've got eggs on the one side, sperm on the other. Chromosomes replicate, and then they begin to divide. So when they divide, they get to those 2 divisions. Each gamete just has the one chromosome with the one factor on it, and you get one from the mother, one from the father, and together you get a combination. The dominant trait is going to show up, the recessive trait is not. But you can understand then how if I have a big R, little r, I'm going to have a combination of gametes that have a big R, little r. And if they're crossed with only little r's, half of the offspring are going to have that trait and the other half won't. So meiosis explains that idea of segregation. These are some of the general principles of genetics that Mendel helped to discover.